The maintenance shaft beneath Zenthari Medical Station trembled as life support systems cycled down. Marcus Chen dragged his cleaning cart through the narrow corridor, checking thermal regulators that kept the upper levels habitable for the station's alien patients. His breath fogged in the freezing air. This deep, only emergency heating functioned. A soft whimper echoed from an abandoned section. Marcus stopped. Medical stations didn't have vermin, and crew quarters sat 15 levels up. He followed the sound through rusted doorways into a storage bay filled with broken equipment. In the corner, wrapped in a thin medical gown, a small figure shivered violently. The child couldn't have been more than 8 years old. His skin held a pale blue tint, and delicate gill slits along his neck fluttered weakly. Caltharian. Marcus recognized the species from orientation videos, though he'd never seen one this young. The boy's eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated despite the harsh maintenance lighting. "Hey there." Marcus knelt slowly. The child's breathing was shallow, labored. "What are you doing down here?" The boy tried to speak, but only clicking sounds emerged. His hands shook uncontrollably as he reached toward Marcus with desperate, jerky movements. Marcus pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around the small form. The child was barely conscious, his core temperature dangerously low. This wasn't an accident. Someone had brought him here to die. "Security, this is Maintenance Tech Chen." Marcus activated his comm unit. "I need medical assistance in Storage Bay 7G immediately." Static answered him. The bay's location put them in a communication dead zone designed to prevent interference with sensitive medical equipment above. The child's breathing hitched. His eyes rolled back, showing only white. Marcus scooped him up, feeling how light he was, and ran for the lift. Medical alarms shrieked as Marcus burst into the emergency ward, carrying the unconscious Caltharian. Dr. Vashti, the station's chief physician, spun from her console, her forearms moving in agitated patterns. "Where did you—" She stopped as she saw the child's condition. "Trauma Bay 3, now!" Nurses swarmed around them as Marcus laid the boy on the examination table. Scanners hummed, displaying vital signs in urgent red. "Severe hypothermia," Dr. Vashti announced. "Neural trauma consistent with oxygen deprivation." "How long was he in the maintenance section?" "I don't know." Marcus stepped back as medical staff worked. "I found him 20 minutes ago, maybe longer. His neural pathways are damaged." The doctor's voice carried professional calm that didn't hide her concern. The cold interrupted blood flow to developing brain tissue. "Even if we stabilize him, there will be permanent cognitive impairment." A tall figure appeared in the doorway. Administrator Krex moved with the fluid grace of his species, his silver skin reflecting the medical bay's harsh lighting. His large black eyes surveyed the scene without emotion. "Dr. Vashti." His voice carried absolute authority. "Report. Young Caltharian male, approximately 8 standard years. Severe hypothermia and brain damage from prolonged exposure. I estimate his cognitive function will be reduced to perhaps 30% of normal." Krex studied the readouts. "Parents?" Ambassador Thek and his wife arrived 6 hours ago for the trade negotiations. Their son became difficult during the journey. Violent episodes, inability to process language, aggressive behavior towards staff. Marcus watched the administrator's expression remain perfectly neutral. They requested discretionary medical intervention. They requested a quiet solution to an embarrassing problem. Dr. Vashti's four hands moved in a gesture Marcus didn't recognize. "A family with political aspirations cannot afford questions about genetic defects." "And you accommodated this request?" "The child posed a danger to himself and others. I sedated him and arranged for him to be transferred to a secure facility for specialized care." Krex's gaze moved to Marcus. "How did he reach the maintenance levels?" "Someone carried him there." Marcus felt anger building in his chest. He was wearing a medical gown, barely conscious. "Kids don't wander into maintenance shafts by accident, Mr. Chen." The administrator's tone remained conversational. "You are assigned to cleaning duties, not medical emergencies. Your intervention, while well-intentioned, has created complications." "Complications?" Marcus stared at him. "This child almost died. This child is severely brain damaged and will require constant care for the remainder of his life. His parents cannot provide that care while maintaining their diplomatic careers. The most humane solution was to allow natural processes to conclude without prolonging suffering." Dr. Vashti's hand stilled. Several nurses stopped their work, staring at the administrator. "You're talking about murder." Marcus stepped closer to the examination table. "He's just a kid. I am discussing practical solutions to difficult problems." Krex moved to the medical displays. Dr. Vashti, discontinue treatment. Record the cause of death as complications from pre-existing neurological trauma. Sir, I cannot. You can and you will. The boy's parents have already filed the necessary documentation. Officially, he died during transport to a specialized facility. Marcus looked at the child's peaceful face. The warming treatments had brought color back to his blue skin, and his breathing had steadied. Damaged or not, he was alive. No. Marcus positioned himself between Krex and the examination table. I won't let you kill him. The administrator's expression didn't change. Security to Medical Bay 3. The child's eyes opened. Unfocused but aware, they found Marcus's face and held there. His hand moved slightly, fingers curling around the edge of Marcus's shirt with surprising strength. Security officers filled the doorway as the boy's grip tightened. Whatever happened next would determine whether a damaged child lived or died in the name of political convenience. Heavy footsteps echoed in the medical bay as 4 security officers entered. Their leader, a broad-shouldered Corvin with scarred chitin plating, surveyed the scene with professional detachment. Administrator Krex, his voice rumbled through chest speakers. How may we assist? Remove Mr. Chen from this area. He has interfered with authorized medical procedures. Marcus felt the child's fingers tighten on his shirt. The boy's eyes remained fixed on his face, pupils responding to light but showing confusion, fear. Whatever brain damage he'd suffered, some part of him understood the danger. Sir. The lead officer approached slowly. Please step away from the patient. His name is Keth. Dr. Vashti spoke quietly from behind her console. According to his medical records, his name is Keth. Administrator Krex turned toward her. Dr. Vashti, you seem to have forgotten the parameters of this situation. I remember them perfectly. I also remember my medical oath. Her 4 hands moved across holographic displays, inputting commands. I'm recording this conversation and transmitting it to the Galactic Medical Ethics Board. The security officers exchanged glances. Interfering with authorized procedures was one thing, but preventing a doctor from fulfilling ethical obligations carried serious consequences. Officer Thrain. Krex's voice carried warning. Dr. Vashti is experiencing emotional strain. Please escort her to her quarters for mandatory rest. Thrain's mandibles clicked, a sign of uncertainty in Corvin body language. Sir, if she's filing ethics complaints, protocol requires we maintain neutrality until... Protocol requires you follow direct orders from station administration. Marcus watched the standoff develop. Keth's breathing had stabilized, but his eyes showed growing awareness. The child might be damaged, but he wasn't catatonic. He was processing everything around him, understanding that these people were deciding whether he lived or died. There's another option. Marcus kept his voice steady. Let me take him. The room went silent except for medical equipment humming in the background. Explain. Krex's tone suggested dangerous patience. I'll take responsibility for his care. File whatever paperwork you need, but let me take him home. Mr. Chen, you work as a maintenance technician. You have no medical training, no resources for specialized care, no legal authority over an alien minor. I have something better. Marcus looked down at Keth, whose eyes tracked the conversation despite his obvious confusion. I give a damn whether he lives or dies. Dr. Vashti stepped forward. I could arrange provisional custody. Medical emergency protocols allow for temporary guardianship when parents are unable to provide care. His parents abandoned him in a maintenance shaft to freeze to death. Marcus's voice hardened. Any court in the galaxy would consider that grounds for emergency custody transfer. Administrator Krex studied the situation with cold calculation. Around the medical bay, staff members watched with growing tension. This had moved beyond a simple medical decision into something approaching open rebellion. The child requires constant supervision, specialized medication, educational support adapted for his cognitive limitations. The cost alone would exceed your annual salary. Then I'll find a way to pay for it. Even if you could provide adequate care, which is unlikely, you would be caring for someone who will never develop beyond the mental capacity of a much younger child. He will never live independently, never contribute to society, never repay the investment in his survival. Keth made a soft sound, almost like a question. His free hand moved toward Marcus's face with uncertain coordination. Maybe not. Marcus caught the small hand gently. But he'll be alive to try. Officer Thrain stepped forward. Administrator, I'm required to report potential violations of galactic protection statutes regarding the welfare of minor beings. This situation is an internal medical matter involving diplomatic personnel. It became a legal matter when abandonment occurred. Thrane's voice carried professional authority that brooked no argument. If Dr. Vashti files her ethics complaint and Mr. Dix or I, Chen pursues emergency custody, we have multiple overlapping jurisdictions. I recommend we suspend all action until proper authorities can review the case. The silence stretched long enough for Keth to make another soft sound. His eyes moved between the adults surrounding him, some instinct telling him these people held his future in their hands. Administrator Krex's expression finally shifted, showing the first hint of emotion Marcus had seen. Frustration, calculation, and something that might have been resignation. Dr. Vashti, stabilize the patient for transport. Officer Thrane, escort Mr. Chen and the child to holding quarters until legal review can be completed. I will contact Ambassador Thek to explain the complications. Marcus felt Keth's grip tighten again. The boy's eyes held questions he couldn't articulate, but his small hand in Marcus's spoke volumes about trust. Legal review would take days. In that time, Keth would either prove he could respond to care and therapy, or demonstrate that his damage was too severe to overcome. Either way, he'd have a chance to find out who he might become. The holding quarters assigned to Marcus and Keth occupied a small section of the station's civilian wing. 2 beds, basic facilities, and a window showing stars wheeling slowly past as the station maintained its orbit. Dr. Vashti had arranged for medical monitoring equipment and a supply of medications to support Keth's recovery. The boy sat on his bed, staring at a handheld tablet displaying simple geometric shapes. His coordination remained poor, but his fingers traced patterns on the screen with growing confidence. Whatever neural pathways had survived the cold injury were adapting, learning new routes around damaged areas. Red triangle? Marcus pointed to one shape. Can you find another red triangle? Keth's eyes moved across the display. His finger hovered uncertainly before touching a red circle. Close but not correct. Good try. Look for the pointy one. Marcus demonstrated with his own finger, tracing the triangle's edges. 3 sides, see? The second attempt was successful. Keth made a soft clicking sound that might have been satisfaction. They'd been working like this for 3 days while legal representatives argued in conference rooms above them. Vashti visited twice daily, monitoring Keth's progress and adjusting his treatment. The boy's physical recovery was remarkable. Keltharian physiology proved more resilient than human, but his cognitive abilities remained severely limited. A door chime interrupted their lesson. Officer Thrane entered, his expression unreadable. Mr. Chen, you have visitors? 2 Keltharians followed him into the room. Ambassador Thek moved with the fluid grace of his species, but his wife walked stiffly, her gill slits fluttering with obvious distress. Both wore the formal robes of diplomatic rank, deep blue fabric that shimmered under artificial lighting. Keth looked up from his tablet. His eyes widened, and he made rapid clicking sounds that might have been words. He slid off the bed and approached his parents with unsteady steps. Ambassador Thek stepped back. Keth, no. His mother spoke in accented standard. You must not stay where you are. The boy stopped, confusion replacing excitement on his face. He looked between his parents and Marcus, trying to understand why the reunion wasn't joyful. He's been making progress. Marcus stood slowly, keeping his voice neutral. His fine motor controls improving, and he's starting to recognize basic patterns. The damage is extensive. Ambassador Thek's tone carried professional distance. Dr. Vashti's reports confirm our fears. He will never recover normal cognitive function. Normal is relative. He's responding to therapy, learning new skills. He cannot speak coherently. He cannot control his movements. He cannot function in civilized society. Thek's gill slits fluttered with controlled emotion. We have other children to consider, careers that serve the greater good. We cannot sacrifice everything for one damaged child. Keth made another soft sound, reaching toward his mother. She closed her eyes, her hands trembling. We did not come to reclaim him. Her voice was barely audible. We came to grant formal custody transfer. Officer Thrane stepped forward. The legal review has concluded. Galactic Protection Services has approved emergency custody based on abandonment criteria. If Mr. Chen accepts full responsibility, custody can be transferred immediately. Marcus looked at Keth, who was still trying to understand why his parents wouldn't touch him. The boy's damaged brain couldn't process complex emotions, but he clearly recognized rejection. There are conditions. Ambassador Thek produced a data pad. No contact with our family, no public discussion of his origins, no claims against our estate for support. He becomes your responsibility completely. And if something happens to me, if I can't care for him anymore, then you make arrangements. He is no longer our concern. The coldness in Thek's voice made Marcus's hands clench. These people had created a child, damaged him through their neglect, then decided he was too inconvenient to keep alive. I need to know he'll be safe if I die first. There are care facilities, Officer Thrain said carefully. Not ideal, but legal guardians can establish trust funds, designate backup caregivers. Keth had given up trying to reach his parents. He returned to Marcus's side, his tablet forgotten on the floor. His small hand found Marcus's shirt again, that same desperate grip that said everything about trust and abandonment. I accept custody. Marcus looked directly at Ambassador Thek. I'll give him something you never could. Medical care? Educational therapy? We investigated those options. Love. Marcus felt Keth lean against his leg. I'll give him someone who cares whether he lives or dies. Ambassador Thek's wife made a sound that might have been grief or relief. Her husband's expression remained perfectly controlled, but his gill slits betrayed rapid breathing. Sign here. Officer Thrain extended his datapad. Full custody transfer, all rights and responsibilities. Once this is complete, there's no changing your mind. Marcus signed without hesitation. The legal documents were just formalities. He'd made his real commitment 3 days ago when he carried a freezing child out of that maintenance shaft. Ambassador Thek and his wife left without another word. Keth watched them go, his damaged brain processing abandonment in whatever way it could. Then he looked up at Marcus with those trusting eyes and clicked something that might have been a question. Yeah, buddy. Marcus knelt to pick up the forgotten tablet. It's just us now. Outside the window, stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small tragedy and smaller triumph playing out in the holding quarters of a medical station. The transport ship Meridian's Hope hummed with steady engine vibrations as it carried its 2 passengers toward Earth. Marcus had used most of his savings to book passage on a civilian liner, spending the extra credits for a cabin with medical facilities. Keth sat by the viewport, watching hyperspace swirl in patterns his damaged mind found endlessly fascinating. Dr. Vashti had provided detailed care instructions and enough medication to last 6 months. She'd also arranged contacts with specialists on Earth who had experience treating neurological trauma in alien species. The prognosis remained guarded, but she'd been cautiously optimistic about Keth's potential for continued improvement. The human medical establishment has different approaches to brain injury rehabilitation, she'd explained during their final consultation. Less focused on species-specific protocols, more willing to improvise. It might benefit him. Now, 3 days into the journey, Marcus was learning the reality of caring for a severely disabled child. Keth needed help with basic tasks, supervision to prevent him from hurting himself, constant patience as he struggled to communicate, but there were also moments of unexpected breakthrough. This morning, Keth had successfully completed a puzzle that had frustrated him for hours. His celebration, rapid clicking sounds, and hand flapping had been so genuine that other passengers smiled despite their initial discomfort with his behavior. Earth approach in 6 hours, the ship's AI announced. All passengers report to custom stations for processing. Marcus gathered their few belongings and helped Keth into a clean outfit. The boy's coordination had improved noticeably during the trip, though he still needed assistance with complex movements. The custom station buzzed with activity as passengers from a dozen worlds processed entry documentation. Marcus had worried about questions regarding Keth's status, but the customs officer barely glanced at their paperwork before stamping approval. Purpose of visit? Permanent immigration. I'm a U.S. citizen, he's my adopted ward. Medical documentation? Marcus provided the thick folder Dr. Vashti had prepared. The officer scanned key pages noting the neurological damage and ongoing treatment requirements. You'll need to register with social services within 30 days. The kid will qualify for disability support and educational assistance. She stamped their documents again. Welcome home. The apartment Marcus had rented sight unseen occupied the ground floor of a converted house in suburban Denver, small but clean with a fenced yard where Keth could play safely. The previous tenant had left basic furniture, and Marcus had arranged for medical equipment to be delivered. Keth explored their new home with careful steps, touching walls and furniture as if memorizing texture and location. He paused at the bedroom window, watching neighborhood children play in a nearby park. You want to go outside? Marcus opened the back door, leading to a small garden area. It's safe here. Keth stepped onto grass for the first time, his expression shifting between wonder and uncertainty. Earth's heavier gravity made him move even more carefully, but the sensation of soil and growing things seemed to fascinate him. A neighbor appeared at the fence line, an elderly woman with silver hair and paint-stained clothes. You must be Marcus. I'm Helen Morrison. I live next door. She studied Keth with curious but kind eyes. And this young man would be? Keth. He's special needs? Helen's tone carried no judgment, only practical concern. I taught special education for 30 years. If you need recommendations for services, schools, anything like that, just ask. Relief flooded through Marcus. He'd been dreading the inevitable questions, the stares, the assumption that caring for Keth was either saintly or foolish. Actually, yes, I need to find therapists, doctors, maybe educational programs. Dr. Sarah Chen at University Hospital, no relation, I assume, specializes in traumatic brain injury in children. She's worked with non-human physiology before. Helen made notes on a piece of paper. There's also a support group for parents of disabled kids. Meets Thursday evenings at the community center. Keth had found a small flower garden and was crouched beside it, gently touching petals with one finger. His concentration was absolute, his movements surprisingly gentle for someone with his motor difficulties. He likes growing things, Helen observed. I could use help with my vegetable garden if he's interested. Sometimes occupational therapy works best when it doesn't feel like therapy. Over the following weeks, Marcus established routines that worked for both of them. Mornings started with basic physical therapy exercises, followed by sessions with educational software designed for cognitive rehabilitation. Afternoons meant time in Helen's garden, where Keth showed remarkable patience for detailed work despite his coordination problems. Chen confirmed Dr. Vashti's assessment while offering more optimistic projections. His brain is still developing, which gives us advantages we wouldn't have with an adult patient. The neuroplasticity of his species may actually exceed human norms. I've seen similar cases achieve functional independence with intensive therapy. The support group meetings proved invaluable for Marcus, connecting him with other parents facing similar challenges. Their children had different conditions, autism, cerebral palsy, developmental delays, but the daily realities were familiar. Sleepless nights when Keth had nightmares, frustration when communication broke down, small victories that meant everything. 6 months after arriving on Earth, Keth spoke his first clear word in Standard, Marcus. He pronounced it carefully, his eyes bright with achievement. Marcus stopped preparing dinner, hardly daring to believe what he'd heard. What did you say? Marcus. Clearer this time? With obvious pride. Keth pointed to himself. Keth. It wasn't much by normal standards. Most children spoke dozens of words by his age. But for a boy who'd been left to die because he was too damaged to deserve life, it was a miracle. That's right, buddy. You're Keth and I'm Marcus. Marcus knelt to meet the child's eyes. We're family. Keth's smile was radiant, untouched by the complications that had defined his short life. In that moment, Marcus understood something fundamental about worth and potential, and the difference between existing and truly living. Outside, Helen's garden grew with the careful attention of small, damaged hands, learning to nurture life. Inside, a human janitor and a brain-injured alien boy continued building something neither of their species had fully understood before. A family defined not by genetics or politics or social expectations, but by the simple revolutionary act of refusing to let someone die alone. 2 years had transformed both of their lives in ways Marcus never could have predicted. Keth's vocabulary now included over 200 words in Standard, supplemented by an evolving system of clicks and gestures that helped him communicate complex ideas when speech failed. His coordination had improved enough that he could help Helen plant seedlings and assist Marcus with simple maintenance tasks around the house. The breakthrough came during a routine therapy session with Dr. Chen. Keth had been struggling with a spatial reasoning puzzle, his frustration building as his damaged motor skills prevented him from placing pieces where his mind knew they belonged. Then, without warning, he began clicking in rapid, complex patterns while moving the pieces with new precision. Are you seeing this? Dr. Chen activated her recording equipment. He's developed a supplementary cognitive system. The clicking isn't just communication. It's active processing. He's using sound patterns to compensate for damaged visual spatial areas. Marcus leaned forward, watching Keth work. The boy's eyes remained unfocused in the way that usually indicated confusion, but his hands moved with purpose as he clicked out intricate rhythms. Is that normal? It's unprecedented. Dr. Chen made rapid notes. Most brain injury patients learn to work around damage through practice and repetition. This is something else entirely. He's actually rewiring his cognitive processes, creating new neural pathways that incorporate auditory processing in ways we've never documented. Keth completed the puzzle, then looked up with satisfaction. He clicked a short sequence that Marcus had learned meant finished, followed by a longer pattern they hadn't heard before. What was that last part? Keth repeated the sequence, then pointed to the completed puzzle and clicked again. The pattern was identical. I think, Dr. Chen said slowly. He just named the puzzle. That clicking sequence might be his word for the specific spatial relationship. Over the following months, they discovered Keth was creating an entire supplementary language. Simple concepts he could handle in standard, but complex ideas, spatial relationships, and abstract thoughts were processed through clicking patterns that seemed to operate on completely different logical structures. It's not just compensation, Dr. Chen explained during a consultation that included specialists from 3 different universities. It's evolution in real time. His brain is developing capabilities that neither human nor Keltharian neurology typically supports. Marcus watched Keth work in Helen's garden, clicking softly to himself as he examined plant growth patterns. The boy could predict which seedlings would thrive and which needed additional support with uncanny accuracy, as if his unique cognitive process let him perceive botanical relationships others missed. What does this mean for his future? We don't know. He may never achieve traditional independence, but he's developing abilities that could be incredibly valuable. Agricultural science, pattern recognition, spatial analysis, there are applications we're just beginning to understand. The implications excited researchers, but Marcus focused on simpler concerns. Keth was happy, healthy, and learning. He'd found ways to contribute meaningfully to his community. Helen relied on his garden insights, neighborhood children included him in games he could manage, and local schools were beginning to ask questions about his educational potential. The real test came when Ambassador Thek requested a meeting. Marcus hadn't heard from Keth's biological parents since the custody transfer, but the ambassador's message was formal and urgent. They met at a neutral location, a conference room in the same medical station where Marcus had first found Keth freezing to death. Thek looked older, his ceremonial robes unable to hide the weight of whatever brought him here. I have been monitoring reports of my former son's stomach's development. Your son. Marcus kept his voice level. His name is Keth, the child we abandoned because he was brain damaged and would never contribute to society. The sex gill slits fluttered rapidly. According to Dr. Chen's research publications, he has developed cognitive abilities that may represent a new form of intelligence. Marcus said nothing, waiting. There are political implications. If it becomes known that we discarded a child who later proved to have unique capabilities, it could damage our family's reputation, our diplomatic standing. Good. The simple word hung in the air between them. Mr. Chen, you must understand. I understand perfectly. You threw away your kid because he was inconvenient. Now that he might be valuable, you want to reclaim him. Thek's composure cracked slightly. We made a difficult decision based on medical advice. If we had known, you would have done the same thing. Marcus stood to leave. Because you were never looking at a child. You were looking at a problem to be solved. We could provide resources for his education, research opportunities. He has everything he needs. Love, security, people who value him for who he is, not what he might become useful for. Marcus walked toward the door, then paused. He doesn't remember you. 3 years of therapy, and he's never once asked about his biological parents. Maybe that tells you something about the impression you made. Behind him, Ambassador Thek sat in silence as the door closed. The transport back to Earth gave Marcus time to think about the future. Keth would face challenges no matter how remarkable his developing abilities became. There would always be people who saw him as damaged, others who might try to exploit his unique gifts, and the ongoing reality that his cognitive differences would require lifelong support. But he would face those challenges as part of a family that had chosen him, valued him, and refused to give up on him when the rest of the galaxy had written him off as worthless. When Marcus arrived home, he found Keth in the garden with Helen, clicking excitedly as he examined a plant that had developed unusual growth patterns. His damaged brain had recognized something the trained botanist had missed, and together they were exploring possibilities that neither could have discovered alone. Marcus home, Keth announced without looking up, his attention focused on the plant's structure. His clicking grew more complex as he tried to explain his observations, supplemented by gestures and the few standard words he could manage. Helen translated with the fluency that came from months of practice. He thinks this mutation might be beneficial rather than harmful, something about the leaf structure being more efficient for light absorption. Marcus joined them in the garden, kneeling beside the boy who had taught him that worth couldn't be measured by conventional standards. Keth leaned against him with casual affection, still clicking his theories about plant development while dirt-stained fingers pointed out details only his unique perspective could perceive. The stars were coming out overhead, the same stars that had witnessed a maintenance worker refuse to let a damaged child die forgotten and alone. Now those stars watched a family that had learned the difference between being normal and being whole, between meeting expectations and exceeding the limitations others tried to impose. In Helen's garden, where careful hands nurtured growing things, a brain-damaged alien boy continued proving that sometimes the most important discoveries came from minds that worked differently than everyone else expected. And in a small house in suburban Denver, a human janitor who had saved one discarded life continued learning that family was built not from genetics or politics or social approval, but from the simple revolutionary choice to believe that every life had value worth protecting. The click patterns that helped Keth understand his world grew more complex each day, creating new possibilities for communication, comprehension, and connection. He would never be the child his biological parents had wanted, but he had become exactly the son Marcus had chosen to love. That, in the end, made all the difference between survival and truly living.